Boardroom. This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Lindsay Poss, Victoria Taylor, Jeff Cohen. For those of you who are new to the after show live stream, welcome to the official after show of esports. What we do here is we cover all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. It's still the business and the Business of Esports news, the gaming news, all the topics that come up during the week. We look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We still dissect, we still analyze everything going on in the industry. But the best part is, on the after show live stream, we get to do it live with you guys. We get to answer your questions. You get to challenge us. You get to get in our faces. I encourage you to participate. If you're lurking in the background, we still love news, but absolutely encourage you to participate. It's a very safe space here. How are you guys all doing?
Good.
Doing great.
Good. That was the shortest intro ever. I wasn't even.
We have so many topics this week. It's ridiculous. Good. First of all. Lawal Hakim says, first time catching the stream, 2 a.m. here. That is dedication.
Wow.
We love you for it. Thank you for coming.
Welcome.
Yes.
Also, Jeff, I did my short intro because I have a bit of, I have an announcement. I have something I want to plug, if that's okay, which is the Business of Esports minted the world's first esports NFT, and it's for sale. I encourage you can go find it on businessofesports.shop. It's available now. If you want to own probably the most collectible piece of esports and gaming history of this decade for sure, maybe even of this century, I highly recommend going and taking a look and checking it out. Available for the low price of 470 Ethereum. So I wanted to plug that. That's why I kept the intro short, so that people could go check out the world's first esports NFT.
I mean, I think the three of us here are going to pool our resources and buy that.
Well, what I said was you should go buy William's book, The Book of Esports. But if you have $1 million left over, like burning a hole in your pocket, then the world's first esports NFT should absolutely be your next purchase.
Now, with an NFT, if someone buys this, can they then resell it?
Yes, they can.
Oh, this is a steal then.
Right, it's never going to go down in value.
No.
And as the original creator, I actually get a cut of the resale also.
Oh, really? Is that actually the case and typically with NFTs?
It's baked into many of the contracts for NFTs, yes. Not everyone, but yes. In many of the cases, that is part and parcel of it. In fact, we talked about this story on the podcast, just to tease, and we did get into a whole conversation around gaming and NFTs, which I think is very interesting, very topical, very relevant right now. One of the stories that we talked about on the pod, I'll just tease the podcast for tomorrow, guys. One of the things we talked about was Tfue launching his custom NFT collection, which, by the way, he's not first. We were first. So he's a little late to the NFT game, but he's coming out with some interesting things. We talked about EA essentially EA stating that they want to be a media business, not a game developer. And we talked about Nintendo making up 15% of North America's gaming revenues in 2020, which was an astonishing number to both William and I. We had a long discussion on this. Very interesting. And finally, we talked about Atari not breaking up their business, but separating their business into two divisions, Atari Gaming and Atari Blockchain. And what that meant for Atari, the business, and will we ever see Atari make a comeback, that kind of thing. So those are the four things you can expect on the podcast tomorrow. anyone want to talk about these before we move on? You can see just the number of stories I have.
I want to talk about all of them, Paul. They're so good.
Okay, which one did you want to chime in on?
We can go to stories and we can always come back if we have time.
Well, was there anything in there that was just you felt like really like pressing?
For Tifu, what are his NFTs?
Already.
They're video clips?
Yeah, they're short animated clips, yeah.
Isn't there was something else? Bobblehead? Did I read that right?
Cool.
I saw something about a bobblehead, I swear.
In
I'll
the
look it
Tifu
up.
story?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, there's definitely no physical product that he's selling.
Oh, of course.
I know 100 Thieves also announced an NFT or a series of NFTs that they were selling.
There is a bobblehead.
But, I mean, none of them as interesting as the Business of Esports NFT, the world's first esports NFT.
The article that I thought was the most interesting of those was the EA one. What was the story within the, beyond the headline? They're looking to produce content.
Yeah, so they want to make shows around FIFA, Sims, Apex, and FIFA, Sim, Apex, and Madden, where they want to create more entertainment content and more shows and things like that. The message is like content's king kind of thing, right? They want to be in more of a media business than a gaming business and be seen that way. I think what was interesting for both William and I, and this is where most of the discussion was around, is this was announced by essentially the head of competitive esports at EA, not by the CEO, by Todd Cifrin, who's the head of competitive esports, right? And so it creates this whole discussion around where should these gaming companies focus their time in terms of esports? Is it, because everyone knows Sims is not an esport. It's not, right? Why would it fall under his Todd's purview just because they're creating content around the Sims? And so esports becomes this umbrella for like anything we push out to the public to watch kind of thing.
Do they have a head of esports not competitive? Like what?
Well, I don't know, but Todd's title is head of general manager of competitive gaming entertainment.
Okay, so it falls within the entertainment piece.
Well, competitive gaming entertainment, right? And so it's weird because the same person producing a Sims show is probably not the same person who's going to put on the very best Apex Legends tournament. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, I think you're being a little bit taking it too literal, right? Like, I don't think Todd is going to be the one like producing the show. He's like the business executive that's sitting on top of all of this. I assume there will be someone different running the Apex show versus the Sim show. Otherwise, I agree with you. It shouldn't be the same person, but I doubt it would be.
And why isn't this coming from the CEO? Why isn't it coming from?
That's a better question, because particularly when you're talking about, changing how people view your company, which, the title of the article was they don't want to be a games company anymore. They want to be a media company. One, I would argue all these companies are already media companies. So it's a little bit of, it's kind of a pointless distinction to some extent, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to make that kind of business shift, like that usually would come from, on an earnings call at an investor day, from a CEO or, someone at the C level, not necessarily from some article, with kind of a lower level executive. So that is a bit surprising, but I think the strategy is smart. I mean, I don't know about necessarily pivoting completely from being a games company to a media company, or whatever that actually means. I think the strategy of creating content around, esports, and doesn't necessarily have to be the competitive piece. I think we've talked about EA's kind of what they're doing with the Sims and kind of that TV show that they're doing with it, that I think we had a debate or an argument about whether it would be successful. I think it will be, for the record. But yeah, I think it's a smart strategy.
I mean, Chris makes a good point here. Apex Titanfall will make more money as a Star Wars clone than an esport, which very well could be the case. I mean, for me, it's always like this spectrum, right? You have Sims on one end, which we know can't be a competitive esport, and so it makes a ton of sense to create entertainment around it, right? You probably have something like FIFA in the middle, where it's like it sort of makes sense to like it could swing towards competitive esport and it could swing towards pure entertainment. And so you could probably do both very well. And then you have Apex, I think, on the other end, which, Chris maybe is changing my mind here, but I always felt its esport potential was very large. And yes, you could make a Netflix show around the lore and the characters, and there's probably content to be made there, but it's not the most obvious thing right off the bat, not in the current environment.
Could you argue, Paul, that Apex would be in the middle and FIFA would be at the other end of the spectrum, on the opposite end of Sims?
I guess I put FIFA in the middle because it's so mainstream. It has such mainstream appeal, and it's not violent. There's no shooting, right? Like it's just, it just has more mainstream appeal, I think.
I was just thinking in terms of like media potential, like developing content around it, but I see what you're saying.
I agree with Victoria. I mean, I see your point too. I don't think there's one right answer here, but like I think Victoria is talking about how it has the lore and like you could create like
the story and the
exactly. And Paul, you're talking about just the IP is more centric, where you can get like anyone on the spectrum of like hardcore players to like my 8-year-old cousin who would be interested in it.
But not just that. I think with FIFA, you can create a lot of entertainment content that's just obvious.
Right. You could have soccer stars participating in tournaments. Like, it doesn't have to be pros.
Lowell says EA Games changes everything. Fix Ultimate Team and FIFA competitive esports. Their competitive esports should be pro clubs. Here in Nigeria, most people can compete. $1 is 450 naira. Yeah, I mean, FIFA can be a content king if it's not Ultimate Team. FIFA could be. I definitely think FIFA, given the popularity of soccer worldwide, trails or is definitely not making as big moves as I think they could be. Right? FIFA could be a juggernaut from an entertainment standpoint. It obviously has a competitive scene. Millions of people play the game, but don't you guys think that there just could be so much more engagement from an entertainment standpoint that, at least in North America, we don't see? So if it's happening, we don't see it.
I don't think anyone cares about soccer in North America. That's the problem.
So you don't think the content here would ever hit?
No, that was kind of, I guess, a bad joke. I agree with your point. I think they're absolutely. Now look, the FIFA brand is one of the best, franchises in all video games in terms of competitive mode, revenue, sort of if you want to go down to the profit level. I mean, it's probably, I would argue, probably the best IP in all video games. So it's not like they're completely stumbling here and don't know what they're doing. But I do see your point of there is a missed opportunity here to broaden it from an esports perspective.
Guys, unless you want to talk about more stuff on the podcast, guys, tune in tomorrow on the podcast. We cover all these things. It's a really good episode. And especially if you're interested on the NFT side, William and I have a good conversation there. Let's start the show. Let's start the after show today with Tencent, because I think this was the article I saw this week that I will say it got me thinking, geez, I need to go start a mobile gaming company. Because now there's just so much evidence of how profitable this can be. And the headline here is exclusive. Tencent's Timmy Gaming Studio generated $10 billion in 2020, sources say. So Tencent's Timmy Studios, they make Honor of Kings, Call of Duty Mobile. It generated $10 billion in revenue last year. It makes them, if you believe that the number is true, which all the sources say it's true, it makes Timmy the world's largest developer, which is fascinating in and of itself, right? We spend a lot of time talking about Activision Blizzard and all, and EA, but Timmy Studios, that I don't think we've ever mentioned on the podcast other than now, technically the world's largest developer. Who here thinks that this is that like is like when you see numbers like this? First of all, does anyone not believe this? Does anyone think, because there's obviously this is not something that's publicly teased out of, like Tencent does not separate these numbers. So it's sources, it's insiders pulling this out. Is anyone surprised that Timmy Studios is the world's largest developer and generating $10 billion in revenue? Let's start with that.
No.
Lindsay?
Wait, Lindsay, you're not surprised?
No, mobile esports are just so ubiquitous. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know about the specific developer like Timmy as its actual brand itself, but am I surprised it's a mobile developer? No, not at all.
But are you surprised that this company is worth 4 Disneys or 5 Disneys? You know what I mean? Or whatever the multiple is on it.
How
like
many
10
Star
Disneys?
Warses is it though? That's the real question.
Sorry, that was what I mean. The Star Wars number. Sorry. Like,
Okay.
is it like not surprising? Like, is that not like a bit like? Oh,
Well, hold on.
Like,
I mean, William,
what do you
it's
mean
it's not even for Star Wars, right? If it's
That's
doing
their
10
revenue.
billion in revenue,
Yeah.
this is probably like I don't know, pick a number, pick some multiple. Like,
yeah.
Like 20 times Star Wars.
Yeah.
You guys are really
Right?
This
Like,
is insane.
I mean, I don't know how you can say you're not surprised because I like let's be honest. I agree with you. When you think about it, it's not surprising it's a mobile developer. I totally agree with you. Nonetheless, like world's largest developer going to Timmy. I mean, how many news articles have we had about Timmy Studios previously on Business of Esports? You know what I mean?
But
You would think that if it were well known in the industry, we would have covered these guys at least once. You know what I mean? I mean,
right, but
maybe
the
that's
breadth
more of a
is wide and
criticism
the
of
depth is
podcast
shallow.
than it is the developer. But it's shocking. But not shocking. It's very enlightening, I think is the way to phrase it.
But the breadth is
Mike
wide
says
and the
that's
depth
at
is
least
shallow, so it's
20
just not-
Yodas. There you go. Which is true. And so, the question becomes, we've talked so many times about Tencent and their strategy around acquiring, right? And buying other developers, and they own Riot, and they own a big piece of Activision Blizzard, and they own all these other things. But they're homegrown, like Timmy Studios, maker of mobile games, is literally the largest developer on the planet. Though, again, in the context of gaming in general, and we saw, Nintendo in North America did $6 billion in revenue. And that includes hardware and everything else. Activision did like $5 billion in revenue in North America, or $4.5 billion. Like this is huge numbers coming out of Timmy, and arguably not even producing like original games. Call of Duty Mobile is not their IP.
Yeah, this
I think
makes
the
no
one
sense
thing,
to me.
what this shows you is just the insanity of China. Like the fact that you can have one. I mean, it's really most of this revenue is Honor of Kings, right? So I think the disconnect here is that maybe some of us don't, we think of Tencent as the overall brand rather than Timmy. But everyone knows Honor of Kings is a massive game, right? Like any of these monthly game, like revenue by game charts, it's usually top 2 or 3. Like I was just Googling, and like it's doing 250 million a month. So that kind of gets you pretty decently close, halfway to your 10 billion. Then you have Call of Duty Mobile this year, which did another billion or so. So it's not like shocking when you like think about it, but I mean, yeah, maybe they need to brand themselves better.
And I guess
can I ask a really hardcore business question? If you're Tencent, are you better off spinning out a Timmy Studios at the current sort of valuations that game developers, gaming companies in general are trading at?
Probably. I mean, I'd have to, like, if that's a standalone business, like it's bigger than Roblox, it's bigger than Epic, probably by a factor of, I don't know, maybe it's half, like by 50% bigger, because it wouldn't get this. I don't think, because of the China issues, like I don't think it would get the same multiple as like a Roblox or an Epic or even like a Zynga. But with 10 billion in revenue, it's going to trade 2 or 3 times revenue at least. So it's going to be a $40-50 billion company easily.
Well, you're talking about 20 times the revenue of like a Unity.
Yeah.
Right? This is substantial. What is Unity trading at right now?
I don't even know.
Let's check, Jeff. Let's check. Get on
Google.
the stats.
Same thoughts as Jeff, though. Right off the bat, I was like trying to do the math in my head, and we don't hear about Timmy much, or at least I don't, in the news or the stuff that I see. Right away, I think, okay, Call of Duty Mobile, that's a big one. But Call of Duty, I think last year, what did they do? Like 2-3 billion? So I'm thinking, like that's everything, including mobile. So Honor of Kings must have just raked it in. That's got to be it.
Well, just to give you some scale here, Tencent in total reported online game revenues at almost $24 billion. Right.
Yeah.
So it's literally half of Tencent's gaming revenue, pretty much. 40%, sorry, of the gaming revenue. Also, 23% of Timmy's revenue came from North America, or came from overseas, basically. So overseas, like it's based in China, meaning anything outside of China. So, and they supposedly Tencent wants to get this to half. So they have a plan supposedly to get to 50% of Timmy's revenue coming from overseas. I mean, this is not a China story anymore, right? At that point, it's maybe not even a mobile story anymore. At that point, it's truly like a Tencent story. What magic does Tencent have here?
Yeah.
That they've built this business with basically no one noticing.
Are they the ones doing the Pokemon game? I'm gonna look it up. I think they are.
I'm not sure.
Unite?
Pokemon Unite, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
Timmy. To be fair, Timmy is Tencent. I mean, you just said it, but it is their premier studio, right? So, like, when Activision came to them with one of the biggest IPs in all of gaming, like, they went to Timmy. So it's not like, this is like the JV team that all of a sudden we're finding out is better than like UNC basketball or something. Like, these guys are rock stars. Like, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
I think it says more about us than it does about them. Like, we shouldn't be that surprised, I guess is my point.
Chris, I will definitely check out this talk, but I love this China, the NFT that keeps on giving. The other NFT that will for sure keep on giving is the Business of Esports, world's first esports NFT, which I highly recommend. Guys, let's move on. Let's talk about another Asia story. Let's stay on this Asia kind of centric news, and this one out of Singapore. The headline here is Amazon Singapore bets big on video games, launches dedicated gaming store. Now, this seems like a non-story. I will just say that, Amazon obviously everywhere, Amazon.com in the US sells lots of video games, consoles, gaming hardware, everything else. But there is no dedicated store. Like, there's no dedicated online storefront just for gaming. And so what Amazon seems to be doing here in Singapore is testing this out. Who here is a fan of this, right? And given everything else Amazon is doing in gaming, does anyone think this is a really good idea and we should see it in the US? Victoria, giving the thumbs down. Why?
I just don't understand why it's necessary. Like, where's the pain point? I just don't see the opportunity.
I mean, I would guess it's that instead of having to do, random searches and things for what you're looking for, you get a nice storefront and you may discover things, right? I think it's about discovery. It's how can I discover things that maybe I wasn't specifically searching for, but that you surface by giving me a gaming dedicated storefront.
Well, then, but I don't know. A lot of them are going to be digital soon. Like all the games.
Why couldn't this just be a tab on Amazon.com?
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. So this is not a dedicated site. It's a storefront, right? So it's like instead of today's deals, there will be a button that says Amazon Gaming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's a good idea. I don't know. I guess I would misconstrued what exactly a storefront means.
Not a separate site.
Okay. Then I mean that's a good idea because it seems like a pretty low friction bar then, and you're right, you could get some discovery.
I mean, Victoria, I think you were negative on it because I'm guessing you believe that most of the usage of Amazon is just search. Does anyone wonder why this was not a Twitch initiative? Like, why not create a storefront on Twitch that sort of you end up buying on Amazon?
It's a really good question because
adding like e-commerce to Twitch, right? But,
yeah, it feels like something Twitch would want to do too. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the reality is, I think it's probably because Amazon is sort of never like they like if you think about the logical place to do if Amazon is the everything store, right? You probably think that e-commerce stops first in the Amazon portfolio, right? From just kind of a strategic differentiation standpoint, right? And then maybe you think about, look, the fact that Amazon, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you guys, you buy, I'm guessing people here buy pretty much everything on Amazon, right? Like, you know, but do you buy video games? Video games are like the one frequent purchase I think you probably have that you're making digitally. You're already making it online, and Amazon likely isn't even in your purchase consideration set, right? Like, do you ever, like, the Epic Store broke into your consideration set far sooner and quicker than Amazon is, right? So, you know, I think it kind of makes sense to shore up the operating position of the Amazon conglomerate, right? Now, separately, you know, I'd kind of ask, like, you know, I think you're sort of driving at this, Paul. This looks like a test to me, right? I think you sort of said that to me. Like, it seems like these guys want to try this out in a market to see if this has potential to go global, because clearly this is a major place of digital delivery that they're not playing in today. I don't know. I mean, does that sound, I'm sort of stealing your thunder there, Paul, but does that sound plausible to the group that this might be a pilot? You know what I mean?
I guess, William, I'm going to answer your question. I'm not going to answer your question, but I'm going to ask another question. Do we have any stats on like what percentage of video games are bought in this manner? Because obviously, you know, people are continuing to buy more digitally, like, you know, on the Microsoft store, the Sony store. And then I imagine there's still a portion that are bought physically. There's used games, there's, you know, gifted games, and there's just people that like going to GameStop for whatever reason. But like, what percentage of people are like, I want to buy something digitally, but I want it to be a physical good that I get to my house in 24 hours? Like, why would you? It seems like the worst option of the three.
But keep in mind, guys, Amazon also sells a lot of digital goods. Like, I can buy on Amazon a game code that I go activate on my PlayStation or Xbox or PC.
Yeah, they could literally.
And so it's no different than buying
that. And that would just be if you got like a gift card or something. Like, why would you want to do that?
The only way is if it would be cheaper, and that's
right.
Not
so if
happen.
Amazon's going to buy market share and basically use it as a loss leader, which they do, I think they do. But otherwise, I just don't really understand the point.
There's also
From a
some
user
convenience,
purchase funnel,
like I find of aggregating all my purchases under Amazon. Like, there's always this hurdle of, like, I first go and see if I can buy it on Amazon, and if I can't, then I'll go to Best Buy, or then I'll go to B&H, or right. And so, but like, if I can aggregate everything under Amazon, I feel there is a level of convenience there. It's almost like having a game store, right?
But how is that more convenient than just buying it on the Microsoft store to your Xbox?
Because if all my purchases are there, I see all my purchase history. If I ever need a receipt, if I,
you know, not use like a credit card, like you don't get like a credit card receipt. Like, how do you buy things? Like using Bitcoin or something? Like, what?
I do find it's easier to manage just one place. I just want to.
Well, I don't have to, you know, not everyone has your spending habits, Paul. You know, when you're talking about millions a month, you know, us mortals
it gets tricky.
Us mortals can't comprehend.
Doobie Dunker said Amazon created a GameStop. Let's hope not, Doobie, for Amazon's sake. And Neil says, I want the Business of Esports NFT. Neil, it's still for sale. It's still available, but I would act fast because I don't know how long it's still going to be. It may even have been bought up while we're talking here. Chris says, with PS3, Vita, and PSP wiping out their digital libraries, people will seek tangible goods again. Chris, I'm not convinced of that. Is anyone here convinced of that?
I mean, if you're still playing a PS3, like, I don't know. I don't know how much like demand.
I mean, there were people who were upset about this, but I think it's
there's people that are upset
group.
about everything, but like, I don't think that's going to be a huge driver of people moving from what is super convenient to a method that's less convenient because they think in 25 years, like, they might not be able to play their game anymore. But I could be wrong. But to be fair, I could certainly be wrong about that. There probably is a small percentage of people that have that fear.
Says the guy who still plays NCAA football 14.
That is fair. That is a good example.
Victoria, sorry, you wanted to chime in there.
No, I was just gonna say I don't. I mean, there's still a huge demand, right, for physical games and like that whole nostalgic market, people playing the old games, and I don't think that's gonna go away. I don't think it'll ever completely go away, but I think that it's gonna get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah, agreed, but we're intertwining, I think, two different issues here. This Amazon initiative is not about physical versus digital.
I
It's
see.
about
Yeah.
storefronts, eyeballs. And I wonder why instead of doing this, they didn't add e-commerce to Twitch and again, aggregate all of their gaming under the Twitch brand. I see that as a
when you
missed
go to buy
opportunity.
something, you're not. So Twitch could have been used for discovery, and I think that's still a big area, like social commerce. I think that's something you've explored in your past, and I think that's definitely something that's on the come. But when you're thinking about buying something, the first thing you do is you don't say, "Hey, let me go look at Twitch." Like if I want a new headset or a new mouse, I'm not like, "Well, let me go to Twitch and buy that." No, I go to Amazon and buy it. So I think in this case, I think it makes sense to keep it.
Yeah, but
like
you
William
also
said, within
didn't say,
Amazon.
let me go to the Epic store until there was an Epic. You know what I mean? Like, you sort of have to be like, and I think it would be pretty easy to get a site like Twitch in the consideration. Like any of these gaming, it's the same reason why Discord launched game sales, right? Like I think.
Yeah, and then they stopped that because it didn't work, right? Didn't they get rid of it?
They did get rid of it, I think. Yeah.
I think. What was I going to say? Keep going.
The reality is, you want to hit people when they have that design, like when they're. If you're allowing for great discovery, right? And Twitch allows for great discovery. Someone's playing a new game, a streamer you like is playing a new game. The streamer you like has a new mouse. The streamer you like has a new keyboard. In that moment of desire that you create in the audience, that's when you want to hit them with the purchase option, right? And this has been proven over and over again. There's been studies around this.
Paul, I 100% agree. I just think there's two separate arguments. Like you're talking about discovery and like having a link to it. I think that would be the perfect thing. You have a link to an Amazon. You click on the thing while you're watching on Twitch, and it takes you to your Amazon account. I think that makes sense. I don't think that, you need to turn Twitch into an e-commerce platform. It can just be like same way Instagram has e-commerce, but it's not. It's usually through Shopify or through something else. It's not like I go to Instagram and I want to buy like a new jacket. I might happen to be on Instagram, see something, and then I buy it.
But
and William, to your point,
the user has to go. Store, you lose people, right?
I would be if this headline was Amazon's creating a launcher, I think I'd be a lot more interested and a lot more bullish. To me, this is just, hey, Amazon's creating a new like vertical homepage. Same way, like I can click on belts and like Amazon has like a bunch of belts laid out like from different brands. That's all this is. This is like a nothing story. If it was Amazon getting deeper, like trying to compete with the Epic Game Store and Steam, like that's like this is like a big thing we should be talking about. To me, this doesn't seem that huge of a moment. Am I wrong? I don't know.
It depends where they go with it. Lindsay?
There.
To that point, I thought it was Amazon creating a launcher, and I was significantly more excited to talk about this. I definitely thought that that's where the story was going when they said, Amazon storefront or whatever.
See, I don't think the world needs another launcher, but that's just me. Lowell says a lot of people still buying PS3 games. Amazon can buy GameStop for physical experience. It's an interesting thought. I think there's no way Amazon, and especially not at the price that GameStop's trading at right now. I mean, why would Amazon do that, right? Like fundamentally, they could go open as many stores as they wanted. What do they get by buying GameStop? It's not clear to me. Doobie says a lot of parents don't know how to buy these games or gaming accessories for their kids. A gaming tab would also provide brand promotion and more advertising money for Amazon. It's a really good point. It's true. And they can make recommendations and have sponsored, items and all kinds of good things like that. Since we brought up GameStop here, let's transition quickly because GameStop was in the news, and now finally it sort of is a business gaming story, like it hasn't been up until now. Now it sort of is, and the headline here is gaming retailer GameStop to offer up to $1 billion in shares. Stock declines. I will just say. This article's from 2 days ago. The stock didn't decline that much. Real diamond hands all around. So they're going to sell up to $1 billion worth of additional shares. I don't know what the stock price is at now, but we can check on the fly here at $178. So it really hasn't moved much.
I just want to point out, remember last week you asked me why a sell-side analyst would put a $175 price target on it. What were they thinking? Well, it turns out it was the Jefferies analyst. Turns out the stock literally is now $175, and their firm's about to make $20 million. So it seems like she did the right thing.
Yeah. So just to expand on Jeff's comment, it's Jefferies that is essentially underwriting this sale of shares, and as the investment bankers in that deal, they will make a percentage of the total raised. So if they raise $1 billion, typically the bankers there will make 2%, 3%, depends on the deal and things like that. So Jefferies definitely had something. I think I had said that they need to fire this analyst because there's no way this stock is worth $175. But clearly worked to their benefit here. Does anyone like GameStop's chances more now? Again, let's now there's a real business story here.
I mean, someone else. I don't need to hog the airtime.
Go ahead, Jeff, if you have a thought.
I think you clearly, if they can pull off this raise, you have to like it better than you did 3 months ago when the stock, we thought it was going to go right back down. Now they'll have $1 billion war chest that they can do some of the initiatives that we've talked about that maybe could help them justify this valuation a little bit. Do I think that they have a real chance of remaining at these levels? No, probably not, but better than not having $1 billion to play with. And the only thing I would say is everything we just said about why Amazon should have a digital storefront, that's literally exactly what GameStop is trying to pivot to, right? Like have that digital online storefront. That's what Ryan Cohen at Chewy, literally, this is what he built his entire career on, was creating a vertical focused e-commerce platform that kind of kicked Amazon's ass in dog food, right? Like, or dog food and pet supplies. So maybe we should be a little more bullish. Disclaimer, I don't really believe that, but I'm just making the argument.
Okay, let me push. Follow-up question. Should they have raised more than $1 billion? Could they have raised more than $1 billion? And now you're the CEO of GameStop. Where do you spend it? Because just redoing your website and having some graphics cards in stock, which they can't because no one can, what do you do?
I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to raise it. We'll see where they're able to raise. Maybe they'll just sell it to the public because there seems to be this insatiable demand for, who knows? Maybe it's the Fed buying it or something. But if I were them, I would have raised as much money as they possibly could, right? Like, I would sell the company for this price if I could get it in cash. What I would do with the cash, I think I'll leave that to someone else here on the panel that's, maybe smarter than I, that wants to start that one.
I've got it.
Which
you become a media company.
GameStop, the TV show, GameStop, the movie, merchandising. William, did you have thoughts on GameStop here?
No, I mean, I think it's been well said by the group, honestly. I think my major points were hit on. I will say though, don't knock becoming a media business. If you really think it through, I know why you're making that joke, Victoria, but if you really think it through, it kind of works,
Well, because GameStop's one asset, and I think everyone keyed in on this during the whole GameStop saga, or at least because there's really no value in the stores, right? They're huge cash sinks. Half of them are losing money, so you probably shut half those down. But where everyone sort of sees value is all of these Power Up Rewards members, like this huge list that they supposedly have of, millions of rewards members. And so maybe pushing them content is not the right, other than just a sale on headsets is not the worst idea ever. In fact, maybe you have this audience ready to consume your content. That is the play.
Maybe they can start doing award shows, Paul. Sorry.
We can only hope and pray because there are not enough gaming award shows already.
No, there aren't. They're just the one thing I wake up every morning is I'm like, why is there not a gaming award show to watch tonight? It's just criminally underserved market.
That would be amazing. They would be the perfect fit for that.
Chris says GameStop uses the cash for the Snyderverse version of Diamond Hands, the movie. Yes. I see it. Well, it says, close all the fronts that aren't profitable. The e-commerce plan is gold. Expand into markets where you have a chance. Africa. That's an interesting thought, right? Go into markets where, like a Best Buy is not even present, let alone competitive. Like that is interesting because we know gaming is. Sorry, go ahead, William.
No, that's really fascinating. Like, I mean, the answer is like go to foreign markets. It always sounds more attractive than when you actually think it through, because it's really hard to go to foreign markets. But in this case, it has a lot of. It's very interesting as like a resonance model. You know what I mean?
Does the GameStop brand travel though to foreign markets? I don't know how well known it is outside of.
Well, that's my comment. It always sounds so much more attractive until you actually think about doing it. Like everything, like the greatest sentence in the world is like, we're really successful in the greatest business logic in the world is we're really successful in market A. We could do the same thing in market B. We're not in market B now. Why don't we go? Like, that logic looks flawless on paper until you realize there were all these reasons why you built in market A and not market B. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I don't know. I had never thought of that. That's a really fascinating suggestion.
Doobie says GameStop has been collecting those emails since emails existed. Yeah, I think at one point that they did say how many they had, but it's a substantial audience.
How many of those emails are like SeymourButts@hotmail.com?
Yeah,
like, I got to imagine like 80% of those emails are just like completely garbage.
I was gonna say like Dragon Legend at Angel Fire. Like,
yeah, you probably could eliminate all the Hotmail and all the Noel says, we pay premiums to ship games down. Internet is crap in Africa. It's true. I mean, this is why mobile is just so popular in countries basically outside of North America. Is you don't have any of those problems, right? You don't need the physical game. You're good with mobile connectivity, which in some cases is better in countries outside of North America than it is in North America. So now we see why Timmy is a $10 billion business. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Microsoft. And I like this story because it's a bit of a throwback to what is one of our most watched, listened to, loved episodes ever on the Business of Esports. It's the episode we did at PAX with 3-star General Muth, who was the man in charge at the U.S. Army of all of their recruiting at the time when we did the podcast, and he had very interesting ideas around how to use esports to recruit and how gaming fits into the military. And so when I saw this story, caught my attention immediately. The headline here is Microsoft $22 billion Army deal could turn battlefields into video game. So Microsoft won a $22 billion contract to supply U.S. Army combat troops with augmented reality headsets. So they're going to be using essentially some version of Microsoft's HoloLens displays, where they will get virtual imagery superimposed over the physical world, and anything from virtual game worlds to repair instructions to all kinds of things. So to increase the soldiers' awareness of their surroundings, their ability to spot targets, dangers, etc. In some ways, guys, with this deal, is this closer to the metaverse, if you want to call it that, than potentially any gaming company has come, right? Because I get it's AR, but it's still the average U.S. soldier who's going to be wearing this thing is now almost living in an alternate reality where he has so much more information and at his fingertips. I don't know. How do you guys think about this? And is this a step in a direction that you think we're going to see will become completely ubiquitous everywhere?
So someone else want to go, or can I jump on this?
Go
ahead, Willie.
I mean, this is like total ubiquity. Like, guys, just to be clear, like, we're heading into a world where you're going to get augmented visual information for a lot of things you do in daily life, from manufacturing services to, potentially navigating your home or public spaces. Think of the Scene in Minority Report where, Tom Cruise is getting personalized advertisements, right? Like, there's just massive market reasons to have these, personal digital feeds, right? I think in this case, you often see military being a first mover for new tech adoption, right? Like, they have large budgets and the risk reward profile for innovation is very high. You know what I mean? It tends to be like military and space exploration that drive, a lot of like break frame human technologies. In this case, though, what's interesting to me is more like, all right, but we're sort of there. You know what I mean? Because I think for a long time, arguably since like we've all played video games where this happens in it, right? Where there's like augmented visual systems for combat. And like, you guys remember playing like Crisis and,
well, this is how most games explain the HUD.
Yeah,
exactly. You look in the game, right? It's like
it's literally every shooter ever is like, oh, you've got your soldier kit 3.0 systems active. It's just what's crazy to me is that like it actually happened, or it's happening, I should say, and it also shows you how, it makes you wonder what else you see in the games industry today that's sort of a prescient explanation for simplified, user-friendly, interactive worlds that are going to become basically the standard, and you don't realize it until all of a sudden there's a $22 billion contract out there.
Is no one sort of like, I've always been somewhat short-term pessimistic around AR because, AR, you think of like Pokemon Go or like, and the applications seem limited and they're not that compelling. And I've always been much more bullish on VR in the long term, especially. Obviously for this to work and I think be useful for a soldier, this needs to be a lot better than like Pokemon Go style AR. Will we look back at this as an inflection point for AR where like AR actually is a legitimate potential consumer technology that people would wear something every day or, have glasses like the Google Glass, but, actually useful? Will we look back and see this as an inflection point?
I think 100%. I think that there's a lot of use of AR for consumers already, even if it's just simple things like trying on something in a mirror that you're not actually trying on, or being able to place furniture in your home by shopping online before you purchase it, being able to see what it looks like, trying paint colors on your wall, all really cool stuff. Obviously, there's been a lot of developments in training and education. So I think so. I think that this is definitely newsworthy. I think it's great. It could have great potential. I think to your point, it has to be a lot better than like the Pokemon Go, especially if it's something like it's trying to build reaction time and it's used for such a important training process. I think it's great. I don't know how it's going to look beyond that. I was expecting more of a VR simulation. I'm a little bit more surprised that they're out in the field and it's just augmented reality. Personally, I don't see any crossover between the terms augmented reality and metaverse. Oh, Paul, you didn't remind everyone to take a shot when we say metaverse this time, but
that's true.
I don't see a huge crossover there. I mean, that's just my understanding of the metaverse is full immersion into, a virtual world, whereas this is just additional augmented information into a real setting. I mean, now we're splitting hairs, but it's the way I take
Victoria, is it true that your new John Lennon glasses are actually AR?
They are. I have exactly. I'm not going to tell you what I can see though.
They didn't cost $22 billion, I hope.
They did not.
Lindsay, you were going to chime in here.
Yeah, so this is an interesting story for a couple reasons. But the first one is that I think that I'm not so sure I believe if this is a trend towards the metaverse, just because we've seen a lot of innovation, particularly in the jobs training and HR type spaces. So I see it as a continuation of that and a deepening of that, maybe more than a step towards the ubiquity that brings it into other areas. I think particularly of the it's completely different, but the job training program that worked on soft skills. This seems to be an area where a lot of people really want to innovate and where a lot of companies have moved in previous years, and the Army included. That's not to say that it's not eventually going to help us reach the metaverse, but this just seems like the kind of HR or training aspect of any job seems to be one that employers are very willing to pass off to an augmented or a virtual reality rather than having to spend time and resources doing it themselves. And then the second thing is, to Victoria's point about AR, I think about how much time we spend trying to ingest information in the world around us and how we're constantly inundated. And in a way, I think that having a personalized glass or personalized, your own personal reality that's augmented with the information that you want to see is a much more attractive future, at least in the short term, than being totally immersed in a virtual reality, which I think will be a more long-term thing. So I'm not sure exactly how those two play out in terms of cost or whatever, but I guess it's easier to imagine people adapting to, because we've constantly been adapting for the past 15 or 20 years to having more information in our daily lives. It's easier to imagine that step into that type of information than like a full world change. So
all good points. Just to clarify, I think the U.S. Army here is not thinking about this as a tool for training. This is primarily like a combat tool. Like, in other words, the soldiers will wear this, and what they say is it said the system could help troops gain an advantage on battlefields that are increasingly urban, congested, dark, and unpredictable. Right? So would feed information to the soldier maybe about what's around them. I don't know what kind of
training might have been the wrong word, but essentially making people do their jobs better is the thought I was thinking of. And that seems to be a very deep interest in a lot of companies, that they're very willing to adapt technologies which makes sense.
I 100% thought that this was for training. Sorry. So this is like for the real deal.
Yeah, for combat.
Wow. Okay. So sorry. I thought this was training.
Really,
I thought this was
a soldier's capability.
Which is the other surprising thing for me here. Then how good is the technology?
Yeah,
right?
This is what
because
like the crux
I
of
imagine like the this is the other piece of me. Like I imagine like the tolerance for fail cases is very low. Yeah. in a combat situation.
Pokemon Go AR, right? Like throwing a ball to catch a Pokemon, it's not accurate like at all.
All. Exactly.
Like, if you're marking an enemy combatant or someone like at a kilometer away, like you don't have room for like 4 feet of error or something.
Yeah, it's probably the case too that bad information is worse than no information, right? Like, telling you like nobody's around the corner when somebody is sort of saying facetious, but it'd be disastrous. You know what I mean? So like, I'm just impressed that the tech is that far along. Which probably the interesting thing here is then think of how close then the consumer adaptation is, right? Like meaningful consumer AR and HoloLens. I mean, probably pricing is going to be pretty prohibitive, but so it is with most things, like so it was with the original VR stuff. So it's interesting to see. I mean, the other thing to read into this contract is makes me think, okay, then consumers got to be really coming soon, because the only real barrier to consumer then is going to be the price, right? And that, we know tech industry solved that barrier quickly.
Well, I think broke this down very, very eloquently here. AR and VR are part of the future. AR when you're out and about, VR to dive into the metaverse at home. Don't shame me for wearing my Oculus headset out and about. Haptics and immersion, until then, we're all just playing on Oculus. Yeah, like I've said this many times before, that I think all the senses need to be satisfied before we have really convincing VR or VR that is true metaverse kind of VR, metaverse grade VR. And Chris says Predator vision. Got it. Yeah, I think that is the way. That is an accurate description of this deal, and probably why it cost $22 billion for all of these headsets. I don't think the technology is simple here. All right, let's change gears. Let's do a bit of a lighter story here, guys. I have this story about G Fuel, and I'm curious. Hang on, I'm curious what everyone thinks of this. And I think you guys know why I'm doing this story, because I have a soft spot here for the person involved. This is G Fuel and Luminosity Gaming star XQC launch the Juiced energy drink. I will say that I followed up on this. This story is from today actually, but he did sell out. So there's no all of the G Fuel, the Juiced G Fuel was bought up. It sold out completely. I don't know how much they produced, but I will say that he is now, XQC is now the highest, draws the biggest following on Twitch of any other streamer. And so it's no surprise that he's done this deal for an energy drink. What do you guys think of this kind of partnership? Is it just like ho-hum? We've seen this a million times before in gaming. Does XQC bring anything really original to the table here? Curious how you guys look at this from an influencer sponsorship standpoint.
I mean, it's definitely nothing new and exciting. It's kind of been there, done that. Maybe he should have come out with an
integration.
Maybe
it's
an NFT.
Juice.
Paul, you seem to love this integration. Tell us why you love it.
Yeah, I want to hear more about why you like it.
Because XQC, if you watch XQC, he's all about the juice, right? And getting the juice, and he talks about the juice, and it's some of it, like he uses it in so many different ways. The word has multiple meanings, right? It could be like rumors about other streamers, or drama, or his incredible gameplay, or like the number of ways he uses the word juice. And I just think it's genius on G Fuel's part, and it's genius on XQC's part. And I love this. XQC is one of these guys right now who has straddled this line between, being edgy and controversial, but still brand friendly, where, brands are not, like, he's not toxic. Brands still want to work with him. Please, like, guys, I've been so critical of Overwatch League for booting XQC. Has my point not been proven that he was the best asset Overwatch League ever had? And without him, the league basically is worth
they
zero.
sold out of his juice, so yeah, you must be right.
Paul, I see some green in the bottom corner of your
Paul's
screen.
not going to let us move on until
Did you buy all the cases?
I did not buy any G Fuel juice, unfortunately. Although we will have to have Cliff Morgan, who's the CEO of G Fuel, back on the podcast. And they were one of the original sponsors of the podcast.
There's something inherently gross about buying a product marketed by a guy that's called his juice. Like, there's just something like disgusting about that. And also, I just wonder if he has to pay royalties to OJ Simpson. I mean, doesn't he have like the trademark for the juice?
That's what I really thought about. I'm like, oh, OJ Simpson also said the juice a million times.
Yeah.
I doubt he's still, I don't know. I don't know the legality. I'm sure they've explored this. Doobie says it's like the sauce. No one thought this was genius. No one bought any G Fuel, the juice.
Paul, it speaks more to your fandom than it does to like a very new and different business move.
It speaks to the ability to straddle that line between edgy and brand friendly that so few influencers manage to do. And this is why XQC is at the top. It's not, I think people don't recognize his genius. And I think
what's
I will
edgy? What's edgy about this? The fact that it's called the juice? Is that what's edgy?
Paul,
no, meaning his entire persona,
his brand persona.
Yes, and I think for a lot of influencers, if you go down that path, you become toxic to brands. And I think he has straddled this line and recovered from a lot of toxicity when he was in Overwatch League, and reinvented himself in a way that, again, to me, it doesn't get more esports endemic than G Fuel. Like a G Fuel deal and a G Fuel flavor is about like the most obvious rite of passage in the gaming world right now. I love that he has accomplished what he has accomplished, and that really I don't think anyone else has. If you guys can name me one other, edgy streamer who is as outspoken as XQC is, who puts himself out there as much as he does, who has achieved what he has achieved from a mainstream success standpoint.
No, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, for me, it's like we have to start thinking about influencers, these individual streamers, as brands, right? So, I mean, if we look at them as brands and that's how we're looking at this, it's not groundbreaking. But I understand what you're saying in terms of individual streamers who have, created their, their position.
If it wasn't him, though, someone else would have figured out how to ride that line the same, and they'd also be selling an energy drink. Like, I just don't think that this is exactly that that groundbreaking.
I don't think anyone has named me one other streamer that you think rides that line. I just don't think
that's
there are
what I'm
any.
saying. If he hadn't done it, someone else would have gotten there eventually, though. It's not.
It's harder than it sounds.
I think what you're impressed by here is this is just a good product tie-in. Like, it's an extremely logical, like, this isn't just like the dude does a G Fuel flavor. He's doing something that he's doing a product that is authentic and on brand. That's what you can say about this. It's just like, you know, don't be surprised that lightsabers, you know, sell toys. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things that, like, it's super on brand, but, you know, it's on brand, like, and that makes it seem like a really good idea. But the reality is it's a product tie-in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just what you're seeing is well-executed product tie-ins feel awesome because it feels like that product should always have been there. Like, you're almost like, oh, he didn't have a G Fuel flavor. Like, come on, that's so obvious. Like, it would be so XQC to have that. Like, that's a great product tie-in.
My question for you, Paul, in order to determine, you know, how enthusiastic you really are about this, do you think 6 months, like, is this a limited edition? You know, he sold some juice and it was a cool product tie-in, you know, some scarcity value, whatever. Like, he could probably sell anything to his fans one time. Or 6 months from now, are people going to be like, yeah, I'm going to, like, to get my juice from like Rite Aid because I'm like, I really want an energy drink. So, like, I'm going to get my juice because I drink juice before I work out. And that's like my drink.
And that's a great point, because I think it's more of that's why I said, why didn't you come out with an NFT? Like, it should be more of a collectible. Like, I don't think people are getting their juice and just cracking them and like, I can never buy one again because they're sold out.
They did do a collectible. They did a giveaway, I think, with 40 limited edition sets. It was not an NFT because, other than our NFT, that most of them are bogus. So you know, they did do this collection, this collector's edition, which had the shaker and the G Fuel itself that they gave away. I will say that to both of your questions, and Chris brings this up, and I'm going to put his comment on the screen in a second, which is, I think as long as XQC is popular, the juice will be popular, right? And will sell. So the better question is, how long does XQC's fame last? And there's a broader question of, how long does any gaming influencer's fame last, right? And is there some generalization we can make? Or is it really a case-by-case basis, how each one manages their own business and their own brand? There's probably a very long, interesting discussion there. I don't know if I have a good answer. My gut feel says that XQC stays relevant and popular for a very long time because of how smart he is in terms of his brand. I think people wildly underestimate how clever he is. He may not have, you know, 2 PhDs, but I think he is incredibly, incredibly smart about how he manages his brand, his character, and how he plays it on screen.
Did you try it?
What, the juice?
His juice?
No, I can't drink G Fuel because I can't have that much caffeine.
So how do you know? I mean, what if it tastes like ram's piss? Like, I doubt it's going to have much longevity if it tastes terrible.
The CEO of G Fuel is a friend, and I know he wouldn't put out a product that tastes like ram's piss. So,
well, you know, some would argue that all of his products taste like ram's piss.
Probably not. I don't know personally, but I think given how well they sell, there's a lot of people who really like the product.
Just one last quick comment. I'm going to contradict myself talking about, like, don't you want it to be a collectible versus you get this juice and you're not going to crack it open and then not be able to buy it again. I was thinking about it, and a lot of people have been successful with these, like, low involvement products. Like, Travis Scott had a Reese Puff cereal, sold out right away. There's probably people who just want to Instagram it and then they eat it. And then there's people who probably haven't opened that box and it's a collectible, like people who have the old Coke bottles and have never opened them. I guess there is a market for it. The Supreme Oreos, I don't know if you guys saw that crossover. They sold right away, and it was just literally a pack of dyed red Oreos.
The Gaga ones, which was so funny.
I doubt people bought the juice to just put it on a shelf and not drink it. There's probably some percentage that did, but my guess is the large majority did not. Chris says, get the money before the shine is gone. How many fans bought the Dr. Disrespect book? I mean, it's not the Book of Esports, but I bought the book. So, I mean, there's that.
Can you hold up the Book of Esports so quickly, Paul?
No, actually, because my book of esports copies at the office.
Oh, because I can hold it up so quickly, just pointing that out that it's right at hand.
And Chris says the doc did Black on BlackBerry. Yeah, and I thought that was a great tie-in too, and I think sold out just as quickly. What was interesting is the doc got lured away by a competing energy drink company, so he's no longer signed with G Fuel. I think he's sponsored by Mountain Dew now. Ecto Cooler made a comeback. Where's Crystal Pepsi? Probably not. Well, maybe, I don't know. This whole
There's probably an opening here now that all the MAGA people are boycotting Coke. You know, there might be an opening now for G Fuel to really take off.
G Fuel is literally one of the largest businesses in the gaming space. Like, people don't understand how big this business is and how well it does. Like, for every team that gets all the attention and zillions of dollars of valuation, like, G Fuel's doing more revenue than all of them. So
are they privately owned still, or are they owned by like a Pepsi or something like that?
No, privately owned. So I wouldn't be surprised one day to see a
I'm sure
$2-3 billion G Fuel IPO. Like, that would not surprise me in the least. So I think people also underestimate just how big of a business. It's not like two guys in their garage.
That oat milk company just went public, right? Oatly, for like multiple billions.
Where's their esports and gaming sponsorship?
I don't know if do people really want to drink like oat milk while they're gaming?
I don't know. I mean, depends how you spin it.
I mean, you want to talk about a drink that tastes like Ram's
oat
piss.
milk.
I mean, that definitely does. It's the point of it, I guess.
Oh, all right. Let's move on. Let's talk about something that really does taste like Ram's piss. Actually, I don't know. And that is Nielsen shutting down their Super Data gaming division. Not much to this story other than the very obvious here from the headline. So they had a global measurement and data analytics company that bought Super Data Research in late 2018 to beef up their Nielsen Gaming and Nielsen Esports products. Super Data said it tracked the monthly spending of more than 160 million video game players worldwide, and its client base included everything from leagues to teams and other entities in the space. Nielsen's now saying it's closing the department, and it will redirect its focus to having gaming services added as a feature for Nielsen Sports, under which gaming and esports will fall. Does anyone think this is backwards, or do we think this is really smart that they're consolidating everything here?
I mean, this to me is surprising, but I guess it's all the devil's in the details. When I read the headline that they're shutting down Super Data, I was very surprised. Because frankly, obviously we all know gaming is a massive category, growing, biggest area, fast growing area of media. And Super Data is a real brand. Like, I know in the investment, industry, every hedge fund subscribed to Super Data because they had really good granular data on games and on publishers. So like every month when it would come out, it would move stocks like based on, what was tracking versus expectations. So the fact that, hedge funds are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars monthly to subscribe to this, and you shut it down, that's surprising. But if it's just more of a corporate rebranding and they're folding it into a bigger gaming division or something like that, then, I'm not as like old man yells at cloud, because this could just be a corporate rebranding. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell if they're doing this to shift more resources into gaming because their sports side is larger, or if they're shutting it down and shifting less resources. And I don't know enough about Nielsen to make that judgment. I would hope that, given that sports is just, I suppose, more developed, that there's more resources, more people, more analysts in that division that can then work on gaming. It's just a little bit disappointing to see the constant association between sports and esports. Would have rather them shifted it to like their media or something.
Yeah, it shows a bit of a lack of understanding, right? Well, it's all sports, so let's just lump it all together, which anyone who's in the space knows that's just not true. And especially from a data perspective, that's especially not true. And so this feels tone deaf to the space. I just want to throw one other thought out there, William, before I kick it to you, because I know you'll have thoughts on this, which is, does anyone think that maybe Nielsen struggled in the space, right? And this is why they're sort of shutting it down. And the struggle comes from the fact that a lot of the players in the gaming space maybe don't want good data, right? That are happy that it's all kind of a black box because we can charge what we want, we can say what we want. I get inundated by these pitches of, we're in 150 million homes. And it's like, yeah, you're channel 3000 that no one watches. And, just because you're installed on 150 million Samsung TVs, right? 3 people watch it. Like, we're in 150 million homes. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of like massaging of data in a disingenuous way that a lot of people rely on. And so good data that you pay for, that you have to pay for, is maybe not desired. I don't know.
I was wondering when your tinfoil hat was going to get put on this episode.
I should just keep one here.
Yeah.
You need to, Paul. We talked about getting props. Like, it's time to upgrade. Like,
seriously,
the soundboard and the props. You need a wacky hand, a tinfoil hat, and like some Monopoly money.
A gong. We need a gong. You can't have a props without a gong.
Oh, you need all there. What was I gonna say? I would sort of make the counterpoint, which is, if you think that, like, there's what was the figure, like $1 billion of venture capital has flowed into esports every year for the last few years, right? That's right? That's the number that gets cited.
It's probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but it sounds right.
Anyway, whatever. Say that's right. I would argue, if that's the case, like, good numbers matter more. Like, there's clearly a market demand for it. Like, if you're in that space and there's that much venture money flowing in, wouldn't there be like a desperate need for this? This feels to me, and this is sort of my question that I've started to ask myself recently, which is, what if we'd called this something other than esports? Like, would we be better off? Because esports forces the sports parallel so directly. Because it's literally like, it's like human psychology. Like, oh, these two things share 5 letters in common. Like, they must be the same. Like, it's a 90% overlap, Like, if we called it like tech competition, or like new media, like tournaments or something, like, something that pointed
bit of a
more to
mouthful.
I think we're gonna have to workshop this, but I am all for the business of esports trying to rebrand the entire industry.
But like,
I think that would be a fun challenge. For us.
Obviously,
The
it's not
business of
serious.
new media
The
competition.
business of technical competition.
All right, guys. You know what? You make fun of me all you want. You go wild. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, if the name were affiliated with a different industry, would we not be seeing some of these decisions treated differently? Because it's a difficult, like, I'm obviously not suggesting we go on a campaign to rebrand the industry. But I am suggesting that all of this sort of technical thinking and, like basically that decisions are made because the name sounds so similar to sports, when the underlying mechanisms are maybe different, and a different name that implied a parallel to a different and maybe more reflective industry, like a more digital industry, right, or a tech industry, might be healthier, because then I think you might see companies like here, Nielsen, making a different decision in which division to aggregate this in, and it might feel more natural of a home, you know what I mean? Even in terms of a client base and a buyer base, right? Like, I bet there's more overlap with people who want technical reporting data and esports and gaming data than there is with people who want sports data, hypothetically speaking, right?
How about we try metaverse-enabled media?
Ooh, mem.
Also a bit of a mouthful.
Short for, and then we call it mem.
Can I just push on William for a second here? Because, William, I thought you were going to come to my defense on the black box thing, because to Chris's point here, he says, Newzoo breathed sigh of relief, right? And you, in a very well thought out research piece, along with a few of your colleagues, right, pointed out the real inaccuracy of Newzoo's numbers, right? This is a company that prides itself on data.
We even had a public debate with Newzoo, actually, about the research paper. We did it as like a live debate where we talked about our research versus their research. And
so Newzoo's out to lunch and you prove them wrong, right? And so you like, if you believe that, which you do, because you wrote that paper, right? Is my tinfoil hat theory that no one wants good data sort of true?
Well, the challenge,
is the conclusion does not follow from that?
the challenge with your with that argument is the specific example where we called out Newzoo and said we disagree. We had a significantly larger market size. Like we were like 27 times larger than their market size. And, you know, like you're thinking if your argument holds that people want kind of general pie in the sky, like our number was a way better number from a, you know, pitching a business, addressable market, you know what I mean? Like our number was a way better number. So I don't think like that specific example doesn't hold. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Like, you could ask something like, is there a bias in the industry towards big, but like, no, I just think because the reality is also the people who are consuming data on the industry tend to be people external to the industry evaluating it. Right. So again, like, I think that if you think that an industry itself is self-reporting weak data, like, and it's an important industry, there's almost more value in an independent arbiter. You know, like, I don't think the consumer, to like Jeff's point, the consumers of these data sets were like hedge funds, you know, and investor bases, right? Like they were the primary market for this. I don't think the primary market for this was, you know, like inter-industry.
This is a great
Maybe
point.
I'm wrong.
So let me give the follow-up question, which is who was buying Nielsen data or not buying it, right? Who were the customers that saw value in buying the data?
Probably people who were already buying Nielsen data before they entered the space.
Yeah,
well, William makes the argument and Jeff makes the argument that it's investors primarily, right? But
Super Data had a big business around actual gaming, like literally like monthly. Hey, this is how much Call of Duty made this month. This is how much Fortnite made this month. I don't know how that data was, whether it was accurate or not, but I know that people followed it like gospel because, to your point, the publishers 10 years ago moved away from giving unit sales, giving really breakdowns by games. Like if you read an earnings call from Activision or EA, like you have no clue how much of the revenue came from FIFA versus Apex Legends versus The Sims versus Madden. Typically, you'd have to like talk to them after the call and like they'll give you some weird voodoo math and like a range of kind of unit sales. But they kind of guard that data pretty closely because they haven't had to really. Things have been doing so well. They haven't really had to like granularly explain their business, you know, which is something you see when businesses are doing well. Transparency kind of goes away. You know, when businesses start doing poorly, investors demand more transparency. Otherwise, they won't invest. So I know that didn't really answer your question, but
no, you did. You hit perfectly what I've been trying to enunciate, which is like, no one wants to buy data because everything's good right now, right?
No. Like, it's not that no one wants to buy data. No one wants to supply data.
But my point is, I think Nielsen Esports data failed, right? Because no one has any incentive to go buy data. No one's digging. No one, right? The whole space is going up like a rocket ship. Everyone's doing well. The publishers are doing well. Small companies getting huge valuations. Like everyone's happy. And so there's really no reason to dig. And in fact, the real numbers may be bigger than the reported numbers, right? I'm not saying the real numbers are smaller than the reported numbers. I'm not implying that people are, you know, over
I think on the esports side, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of talk around like using Twitch views and concurrent views, and like those don't really translate for advertisers. So like I know Nielsen and your favorite, the Overwatch League and Activision, they've been, you know, leaning forward, trying to create a little bit more of a comparison to traditional media. I think that average minute audience is kind of the metric that they sort of came up with, which is a little bit more comparable to linear TV, which we might say, well, why would you want to compare esports to linear TV? Well, we might not, but if you're, you know, an advertiser, you probably do need to justify when you're spending, you know, millions and billions of dollars, the ROI between the two things.
I would go out on a limb and say, I don't think there is any brand on the planet sponsoring esports right now that is going out and buying data to make that decision. I think they're writing the sponsorship check. They are taking whatever data that the brand they're sponsoring is giving to them, and they're using that. So like if they're sponsoring an esports team, the team will say, look, we got you in front of 10 million eyeballs, 10 million impressions, whatever. And I think they're using that data. I think a lot of these data companies are struggling because everything right now is working.
I think that may be true if you're writing a small check, but I would imagine, if you're Toyota and you're writing a $15 million check to the Overwatch League, I guarantee you're not going to, Bobby Kotick saying like, hey, we got you 20,000 eyeballs, like take it or leave it. I am sure you're going to a third party because you'd get fired by your boss if you didn't. If your board said, hey, when you just went and spent $20 million on this league, how did you decide to do that? Well, I don't know. They said it was a good deal. Like they told me they had a lot of
They gave me a
eyeballs.
really good presentation. I can flip you the PDF.
But coming back to Nielsen failing.
Like there's definitely a third-party data source that these people are using.
But coming back to Nielsen failing, right? In a world where you have other data sources.
I think this has to cut to the beginning because we don't know the answer to this. You said just Nielsen failed. I mean, Nielsen did not fail, number one. And also, this story may be them reallocating super data as a brand into a larger gaming brand so they can do more, like Lindsay said, pour more resources into it because it's working so well. So I think we should be careful when we say, hey, Nielsen esports failed, or like esports as an industry doesn't care about data. Like I think those may be overgeneralizations that we probably don't have the authority to make.
Fair. I would just, when you hide a business as opposed to highlighting it, it's not, again, in a world where they have competition, there's YouGov and there's Newzoo and there are other good data providers.
It's certainly
in space.
True that if this is to double down investment in a larger consolidated sector, they could have messaged this better. You know what I mean? Like the fact that we're uncertain if this means it's going away or it's getting bigger, like probably means if the messaging was this is getting bigger, they didn't really like somebody should have recrafted the press release. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All I will just leave it on this, that there's no question that there's a market for the Toyotas of the world who need data because they're writing huge checks, right? But I don't know if the market can sustain, I don't know if there are enough Toyotas today to sustain 6 different data providers, right? That at the smaller level, I think anecdotally, most people, what they see is they don't buy data. They just take whatever data the team or whoever they're sponsoring gives them. At the high level, you may get paying for data, but how many Toyotas are there? There's a dozen massive sponsors like that who have huge sponsorship of franchise leagues and probably multi-million-dollar deals.
In theory, the leagues, I think this is your point. In theory, the league should want the third-party verification because it's a lot more of a power move. You're in a much more powerful bargaining stance if you can go to these brands and say, hey, look, Nielsen said we are bigger than Seinfeld, whatever. Like that's validating. You can use that to sell. The fact that maybe they're not doing that probably leads me to think that the numbers aren't as good as they are using to sell.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the numbers could be just as good or better.
But then what? But then Paul, then I don't agree with it. If that's your argument,
because the brands are excited about the activation and a lot of.
But if the numbers were so good, why wouldn't you pay Nielsen, get the validation, and then get 20 more Toyotas? If the numbers were good, it makes more sense. If the numbers are bad and you're trying to obfuscate them, if the numbers are good, you're going to pay Nielsen, $50,000 to get the number, to get real numbers versus just saying hey, here's my Twitch concurrence. I think
because again, the space there's so much excitement around the space right now that for every brand that says no, there's 3 other brands waiting to do something, right? And I think there's a lot of brand dollars, and you see it all the time, right? Like, I'm not talking about the 100 Thieves and the FaZe Clans of the world. You see really, shitty brands getting sponsor dollars in the space right now because there's a lot of excitement around it. And so I think the good brands especially are having no problem getting sponsors on board without with only self-reported data. Let's put it that way. I don't want to spend any more time on this. Guys, we have time for one more story here. We can do We can do Billy. Anyone want to talk about Billy? Or AppLovin? Anyone want to do more mobile? I mean, it's kind of like the mobile theme here for this episode. I feel
AppLovin's a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
Let's do
AppLovin.
Yahoo Finance article here. KKR-backed gaming firm AppLovin targets $30 billion valuation in U.S. IPO. Before I read the story, does anyone notice that $30 billion seems to be like the standard IPO valuation for a gaming company? Like half dozen now have gone public at this exact valuation. So mobile app and gaming company AppLovin, it's backed by KKR, private equity company, aiming for a $30 billion IPO. They're looking to raise as much as $2.13 billion. It's going to be priced at $75 to $85 a share. Basically what they say, and this surprised me, this was the number out of all this that blew me away. AppLovin now has 410 million daily active users on its platform. And they have 200 free-to-play mobile games, including Word Connect, Slap Kings, and Bingo Story. It posted a net loss of 126 million last year, compared with a net profit of 119 million in 2019, and its revenue surged 46% to 1.45 billion in 2020. It's going to trade on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol APP, which, by the way, I think is a really cool ticker symbol.
I'm shocked that ticker exists. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was. One of the most surprising parts of the story is that hasn't been snapped up yet.
Is no one just blown away at the 410 million?
Well, the
Can
one thing
someone
I
put that
haven't
into
read the
context
F1,
for me?
but
Like, how many daily active users does Twitter have? Can you guys remind me that again?
It was like
more
what?
than Roblox.
How much?
180. I won't forget it now.
So you're saying this is like, this company is like 2 times Jack Dorsey's Twitter, right?
Yes.
So
I mean,
the
that's
one thing I would
insane.
point out here, and I haven't read the S1, so this may or may not be true, but AppLovin has a big, they're an ad tech platform, right? So this platform they're referring to, that might include other publishers' games that just use their ad monetization. So it might not just be for their own games.
True.
So
I don't know. Bingo Story.
Is Slap King exactly what it sounds like?
I hope so.
I hope
Well,
so
wait.
too.
Victoria, I guarantee you it's free to download. You can do the research and report back.
Chris says, and we thought esports was fragmented. Mobile is bonkers. I mean, yeah, when you spread those 410 million daily active users across 200 games, now it sounds more reasonable, sort of, right? I don't know what that distribution looks like. I assume it's some kind of, normal distribution. So you have a large majority of games that fall sort of in the middle. Neil says 410 million. What's the ARPU? In this article, they don't mention what the ARPU is. I assume it's in their S1. I don't actually know, Neil.
Well, didn't they say their revenue was 1.5 billion?
True. So you could do the math, right? So 1.45
Although with
billion.
mobile, sometimes there's a difference in revenue and booking. So I don't know which one. People refer to bookings as revenue, and that could be not what they're referring to in this article. You see that
They're
a lot.
calling it revenue, so I can only take it at face value. But I mean, do the math. You're talking about what, $3?
That's pretty good.
$3 a month.
Pretty good. That's really good.
I mean, I don't know. How does like a skills compare? Do you know, Jeff?
Skills, I think, is a little higher. But like a Glue or Zynga, I think is lower. So it's pretty good.
Any thoughts on where this stock ends up post IPO?
I mean, I'm sure it pops. I would not buy the stock at 30 billion. I would probably short this. I just think, it's an ad tech company at its heart with a, and sort of, I would love to see the breakdown of what's their ad tech business, like that platform versus, the game studio, because none of their games are particularly well known or popular. I mean, they bought Machine Zone, which was a studio that was 5 years past its prime. They bought I believe Lion something. They bought they bought a bunch of kind of mid-tier B-level, C-level mobile developers. So I don't know if when you add that up, it adds up to a $30 billion company, when particularly you're talking about $1 billion of revenue. Like why all of a sudden do we just pay 30 times revenue for these companies? Like I remember, when I would cover Zynga and Glue, and people would be like, well, why would I ever pay more for Zynga than I pay for Activision? Like that was why Zynga traded at 3 or 4 times revenue when Activision traded at 5 or 6. Now all of a sudden, every single company comes out and says they're a platform, and they trade it 30 times. It just doesn't, like, we're talking about revenue, right?
Because everyone's betting on growth in the gaming space and that they will grow into this.
I mean, yeah, at 5 times sales, you're also betting on growth, right? Like they're trading at 90 times EBITDA.
And keep in mind, they showed the net profit in 2019. Not sure what
100 million.
20.
That's so you're trading 300 times, earnings. It's a lot.
It seems to be in line with what we're seeing in the gaming space, right?
I will make a bet a year from now this will be less than 30 billion market cap company.
I think I would take that bet, assuming the markets in general stay solid, right? Like if the markets take a nosedive.
I hope not. But I'll make that bet. That's a fun bet.
Victoria, you wanted to chime in here.
Not important. I was just gonna say that needs to be another addition to the show. So as soon as someone wants to take a bet, there should be like a screen or like a horn to go like brr, 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 brr.
Weird. If only we knew a betting company.
Yeah, we could do that.
We should really keep track of these bets. Paul, maybe you should have Jillian go back and keep track. I want like a website where I can track my bets versus you.
There's got to be bets.
Or we could work with a company to have live betting on the Business of Esports live stream.
We'll see what we can do.
Something like that, guys. That wraps up this week's podcast. We have this week's live stream. We have just one thing left to do. Is what are we playing this week? Lindsay, you're next to me here.
So I haven't had time to play anything because I've been obsessively watching the Formula One show on Netflix.
So you're now into it. You're now a convert.
Oh, I'm so into it. I tried to get Jeff into it too, and he was total downer about it. So
I put a post on the businessofesports.com where I put a take around a news story around F1 and how well they've made the transition to like digital and media and content. Mm-hmm. I just think it's incredible the way they've combined media and content with like Netflix. Their app is amazing. With esports too, right? So they have this whole esports front, sim front, and they've drawn this young audience in that really no other traditional sport has been able to figure out. I think it's
so cool. It's like every good thing about every sport combined. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And also watching their training program. So much of their training is gaming, which is really cool too. So
I love it. We have to go to the race in Houston.
I would die. I told Paul I think I'm gonna cry if I get to actually go to a race.
Jeff, what are you playing? Why didn't you watch the F1 show?
Well, Lindsay pitched it as it's cars and death. So that wasn't very
did not even come kind of close. I said they follow around the drivers, the teams, and the stories, and Jeff said it's like Hard Knocks. And I was like, maybe I've never watched Hard Knocks.
Fair. I did ask if it was like Hard Knocks. You said something like, was Hard Knocks about cars and death? I was like, no, it's about football.
You've been so dramatic.
Yeah,
I said they follow drivers and their stories. Also, the cars go fast, vroom vroom. And then I said, and there's death.
Well, I just think
that is actually exactly how the conversation went.
If we could get Jeff into F1, right? I see space in his living room there for a sim rig, easy, right? He could put a racing seat and a wheel, and this could be like his game. That could be his game.
I don't know. I kind of first-person shooters make me dizzy, so I don't know if a sim racing thing is going to
He'd be
really
fine.
work.
He also really stuck on this death point, and I'm like, how many football players die as a result of their sport? Way
Now
more
we're really
than
going
F1 players.
I'm going to play Slap King this week. It's gonna be good.
Add to those daily active user numbers.
400.
You're only helping my side of the bet, so thank you. William?
I mean, I had a lot of work to do, but I played some Narita Boy, which is a new sort of like indie retro platformer release. Got some very good press. It's very stylistic. I don't know if it quite scratches the itch I thought it was going to scratch, but it's definitely very artistic. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it.
What's it called?
Narita Boy.
Narita Boy. Interesting.
It's like an 8-bit retro with like a VHS aesthetic. It's kind of like it's sort of like a lot of people compare it to like Metroidvanias. I get like Hotline Miami vibes from it, which I really liked. I like this less than Hotline Miami, but it's the same sort of thing where it has a very strong aesthetic direction that you either really like or you don't. You know what I mean?
I thought you were going to say speedrunning Heroes of the Storm.
That's happening. I'm going to get Recce. I'm going to go world record. PB
right.
Look at all my speedrun slang. I'm going to PB the Recce.
Oh my God. Victoria.
Well, I have already downloaded Slap Kings.
Interesting. Wow. Thank you for again helping me with my bet.
What did I play this week? I played a lot of Warzone, and then I also played Oddworld, Soulstorm.
Interesting.
Well, you're now locked down for a month, right? So you should be able to knock out like a lot of
I
games.
Yeah, I tried the new Soulstorm. I didn't play any of the earlier games. Like, I guess it's a bit of a series. Like, I think the original was out in the 90s. Anyways, I didn't play any of the originals, but I tried this one. It's pretty much like a glorified temple run. It's not usually my go-to kind of game, but it's pretty well done. The graphics are pretty cool.
Slap Kings might be your new game.
Might be my new game.
Chris says, no one tried Wild Rift. Man, that NA League of Legends trend. Yikes. Did anyone here try Wild Rift? It's League of Legends Mobile. No? William,
I don't know if I'm the demo. I mean, I need to play it like to understand what it is, but I don't know if in the demo, because if I want to play a MOBA, I'm going to play like,
the greatest one ever made.
Yeah, Heroes of the Storm, obviously. But like, if I want to play League, I'm going to play League. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's one of the things that, in my mind, when I look at the advertising for Wild Rift, because I've seen a ton of ads for Wild Rift, guys. Like,
have you?
Ton.
Where?
Yeah, a lot.
I feel like I haven't seen much. Where have you seen them?
I feel like I see a lot on YouTube.
Okay.
Like, when I see ads for Wild Rift, I get the sense it's not like, hey, you like League, here's more League. It's very much like, oh, you've never tried League of Legends, try this. It's like it's easy, like, try this. You know what I mean? It's very much a different user base, I think, that they're going for than, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'd be curious to see.
Hopefully, I mean, that's the bull case, right? Like when you argue, exactly. Like that's literally exactly what they're kind of aiming for.
No,
like,
you're right. They don't want to cannibalize.
Version.
I mean, unless you think it's incremental because it's, phone time versus
People
whatever. But yeah, I agree.
More.
So in that sense, I think we're kind of out of the market here a little bit. Like we already have League installed. You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't be converting us to Wild Rift.
I'm curious if Chris tried it. If you tried it, Chris, and if it's, I don't know if it lived up to your expectations or if it's, because I do think North America, it may struggle. Chris says 2.9 million North America downloads, which was impressive. It's an interesting take.
And to William's point, like if they can just target like inactive users, lapsed users,
is that impressive? 2.9 million? Like that would
I mean, it's not like 100 million Call of Duty mobile numbers, but that's just North America. So I don't know.
How is that the first week or the first day? It just seems pretty low given how many League fans there are. You would have thought people would just be curious and download it.
Like what's League's player base? 200 million, 300 million, something like that?
Usually about over 100 million.
Yeah.
I think 120 they cite. I don't know.
Chris says, yeah, I did. It was way more casual. Yeah, so I think that confirms, William's thought there, which is this is going after a different player. But it'll be interesting to watch. It's funny because I haven't seen much advertising around it, and I haven't seen any press around it. Like there was maybe one news story, but nothing that they've really pushed hardcore. So I don't know why. Maybe it's coming. Chris says 2.9 million day one sales make it 4th on the list of day one sales. I mean, anything Riot does is going to have a big pop day one, right? Like, I don't think that's surprising. All right, guys. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you all for coming, for tuning in. As always, stay tuned for the podcast tomorrow. Thank you guys, Lindsay, Jeff, William, Victoria, all of you are amazing as always. Don't forget, go buy William's book, The Book of Esports. If you haven't already, leave a 5-star review or whatever review you want on Amazon. It really should only be 5 stars if you read the book, you know. And make sure, go check out the world's first esports NFT. Again, I don't know how long it may be sold out. I don't know how long it's going to be available. But if you're a collector, this is one thing you don't want to miss. And as always, guys, we will do these every week, Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, tell everyone you know to join the live stream. We really love having you all here. Thank you, and we will see you next week.